I quit the job as a bin man, like on a bit of a whim. My missus herself, bless her. So then I had the idea of putting my CV, putting a meeting link on a landing page, bidding on Carrie, Stephen Kenwright and Rise at 7 as terms for PPC. So then when anyone Googled Rise at 7, they got me basically with an optimised ad saying, can I have a job? Went to work the next day, got pulled into a HR meeting and was informed, like, you either give us the trademark or like we're going to have to terminate your employment. So it was like, so I can take this proposition, I can take this trademark and make a go of it basically on your money. And I was like, yeah. So it was like, yeah, cheers then. Off I went. And we started Deviation the next day, and I was basically getting paid to build the foundations of the agency from somebody else, which was awesome. And we did manage to do a project for Represent and get a case study. Then we worked with Pure Gym and got a case study. And then we worked with Big Gym brand in Birmingham and got a case study. So we got 3 case studies from 3 huge brands, which meant whenever we went into a room for any brand, they could see that we knew what we was talking about. A lot of those weren't paid opportunities either, but the other 2 were basically just let us help you out. Me and Sam are really aligned that we're growing the business to sell. And then for Ashley, it's post Deviation, post you get that exit, spend some time with the family, of course, but then can I go and become CMO at one of 3 or 4 companies? So Adidas, Stone Island, WWE, or Man United. Like, they'd be the 4 like brands that I'd want to challenge myself. That'd be something completely different.
Ashley Liddell, thank you so much for joining me on the Agency Growth Club today.
No worries at all, mate. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for asking me on. We've been planning to do something of a chat for a while, so it's good to finally get it in.
Yeah, man. I think the first time I met you was in Brighton SEO San Diego back in September. And since then, one of my favorite things when chatting with you is how transparent and how first of all, how transparent you are, but secondly, you've got like the craziest story, like just not the normal foundational route of somebody who's in the seat that you're in right now. So let's start with that. You used to be a bin man, which is wild, and you are now you're now a 7-figure agency owner. And the fact that your agency is still in infancy stage as well, like you guys aren't even 3 years old. So just walk us through that.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a weird one, to say the least. Yeah, it's a bit of a weird journey. I basically had kids like quite young. So I had my first child when I was, a week after my 18th birthday. So I couldn't go out on my 18th just in case, all that type of stuff. And had kids quite young and basically had to go out and get a job, had to support the family, had to pay the rent. So I ended up in a few jobs. And then after a couple of years, my dad, who'd been a bin man for a long time, basically said, look, I can get you in the council. It's one of these jobs where it's safe as houses. We're always going to need bin men. You'll get standard pay. You'll get a decent enough pension, blah, blah, blah. Do you want to go for it? And at the time, I'd sort of lost all motivation for anything. So it was just like, yeah, go for it, whatever. I'll just pay the bills. It'll be fine. And then after a couple of years of doing that, I don't know what it was, but I just had this, like, do you know when people say it's a now or never moment, or they have that fork in the road moment? And it was one of those where I'd been causing a stir and been a bit of a knob at work, and was on the, like, given verbal warning, written warning, and it was like, you either buckle down and stick at this and do this, or if you're adamant that you want to change and you want more, you have to go and make that happen for yourself. No one's going to give you it. So I quit the job as a bin man, like on a bit of a whim. My missus shit herself, bless her. And basically went back to university and chose to do a business degree. That very quickly turned into a marketing degree. Passed that with a first, then got a job at Rise at 7. Was lucky enough to work with Carrie, Kenwright, Luke Cope, a few other people in the business, and start to really build my knowledge in the space. And then just got hungry as anything, man. Just wanted to progress, saw how hungry some of the people were there, and wanted a bit of that for myself, really. So then everything after that was all about engineering and trying to get as much knowledge and absorb as much knowledge from industry leaders as I could to one day set up Deviation. And then we can talk about this in a little while, but then the whole search everywhere conversation happened, and I had another fork in the road moment, which was you either give up this idea that you've got as a proposition and let them, where I was working, IPG Media Brands, run with it at the time, or embrace it, go for it, and just take it for yourself. And again, made that choice, and then that's when Deviation started, really.
Such an insane journey. Yeah. I love it. So you mentioned, okay, you got a job at Rise. I love the story of how you got that, because, you know, at Search for Hire, we're talking to candidates all the time and we're trying to give them like creative ways to stand out. And I feel like the way that you did it is like one of the best stories that I've heard. So for anybody that hasn't heard it, please take us through how you got that job.
So it was a bit of a weird one, really, because I live in Hull. And for anyone that doesn't know, Hull is not exactly the digital capital of the UK. So for me to gain the type of success that I wanted, I had to look outside of Hull. And it was really hard because there was a lot of talent at the time. We was just coming out of COVID. There was a lot of opportunity, but there was also a lot of people going for the gigs. So you needed to stand out. So I had the idea of basically find Carrie Rose on LinkedIn, see what gets there to tick, which was basically put yourself in the spotlight of Raz. So then I had the idea of putting my CV, putting a meeting link on a landing page, bidding on Carrie, Stephen Kenwright and Raz at 7 as terms for PPC. I'd been given like a free PPC allowance, so like 400 quid by Google. Use that credit to rank for those terms or appear for those terms above Raz at 7. So then when anyone Googled Raz at 7, they got me basically with an optimised ad saying, can I have a job? Carrie and James Hayward Brown, as it was at the time, jumped on a video link, just missed each other. And then they reached out to me on LinkedIn and was like, look, tell us what you want. I didn't have a clue what I wanted. I was just like, I just know I want to work for you. And they gave me a couple of interviews. And then the second interview I had with them was in the SEO team. And I ended up becoming a SEO from there, really.
I love that.
So,
again, such a great story. Again, I think a lot of people could learn from that. You also mentioned the second fork in the road was the trademark stuff. So when we met in San Diego, you spent a good hour teaching me everything about trademarks. I didn't think they were as important until I started talking to you, and you scared the crap out of me. You were like, if you don't have the trademark for a certain, whatever it is, term, somebody could take your website, somebody could take like the bit, like all of this stuff. You scared the crap out of me. So I went, and literally straight after that, we went and hired a trademark lawyer. And for my other company, Salary Guide, we couldn't get Salary Guide because it's like a term that's used in so many things, but we could get salaryguide.com. And I was like, look, as long as that means that nobody can come and just like take our website, then let's do it. So first of all, thank you for that. But secondly, let's dive into the whole trademark story.
I can't quite remember which fashion brand it was, but it could have been Hera. I could be wrong, but it could be Hera. And I'd been watching a podcast with the founder of this fashion brand, and he'd basically said that they'd grown, and I think Represent had a similar issue, but it definitely wasn't the Heatons that I was watching at the time. They'd grown this fashion brand, and a wine distillery basically owned the trademark to their brand name. And they let them grow the hell out of this fashion brand, and then messaged them after a few years saying, we want half the business or we want the trademark back. And obviously they'd built a lot of equity in that term now as their brand name in the UK. So they had to come to an agreement with those guys. But that scared the life out of me at the time as well. But it also sort of lit a light bulb in that you can create something really cool that becomes tangible. And if you can make that thing desirable, or you can make it known in whatever space it is that you're working in, you've then got an asset which could give you an extra multiplier on your EBITDA, all of that type of conversation. So the search everywhere thing was basically, I'd been using the term since moving on from Rise. I'd had blogs and LinkedIn posts and all of that good content stuff go out discussing this idea of search everywhere, which to me was the idea of search is becoming a social conversation at the time. TikTok is a search engine type stuff. I'd gone to a new employer in the IPG Media Brands group and was basically hired to build that proposition. Like, look, we've seen your search everywhere stuff on LinkedIn and on various blogs. We agree that that's the direction of travel. Come and help us build it. And then as I was building it, I started to get the itch to do it myself. And that was like, yeah, actually, this could be the idea. I think this is the play. So I went to work and was like, yeah, I've been calling it search everywhere, but that's mine. Like, you can't have that. And they tried to say that they could because of contracts saying, like, we can, anything you've come up with whilst working here is our IP. Fortunately, I'd kept receipts from stuff I'd done before working there to say, like, look, I've been developing it. It's been a me conversation, not an IPG conversation. And I went home and trademarked it to protect it. Went to work the next day, got pulled into a HR meeting and was informed, like, you either give us the trademark or, like, we're going to have to terminate your employment. And I basically asked the HR guy, like, oh, so am I on gardening leave? What's the package around this? And it was like, oh, we're basically going to pay you for X amount of months and you don't have a gardening leave. There's no compete clause involved. We're just terminating you. So it was like, so I can take this proposition, I can take this trademark and make a go of it basically on your money. And I was like, yeah. So it was like, yeah, cheers then. Off I went. And we started Deviation the next day. And I was basically getting paid to build the foundations of the agency from somebody else.
This is what I mean. Again, such an unconventional story. I love it so
much. It's weird, man. It's all like, to without getting too soppy and turning it into like a sob story, you can imagine the situation at 17, what happens when you have kids at 17. You're due to do like, my son was born in the February, due to do my A-levels in like the March, April or whenever it was, with everyone telling me there's no point you sitting this exam because you're not going to pass it because you've been away, because you've had a kid, all that jazz. Like, where my headspace was there versus where it is now is just completely different, man. It's insane.
Yeah. And honestly, I'd say the best thing in all of that is probably kids being able to look at that story and be like, right, this is what my dad did. Like, you could literally do anything you put your mind to. Because again, it's just so unconventional. It's not like a decade of graft to get to this. And I'm not saying that it was easy, but like, it's just crazy.
It's going to be one of those situations where at some point it will go over that teeter-totter where someone will say you're an overnight success, and it'll just be like, well, no, you've missed out on like this whole journey to get here. So that's why it's important to me to like get it into the ether a little bit and get it into the world, because the last thing I want is for someone to think I got lucky, because like I really didn't. It's just been graft, really. But yeah.
No, and I think that's evident as well. Like, what was it? I heard the story came from, I can't remember who it was told me, but when you were working at Rise, you had future founder on your LinkedIn.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah. Like I've always been entrepreneurial is the thing. So I've always known that I wanted to do my own thing. And short term, I can be a really good employee, but then I get bored and I'm looking at the next thing. So I'm actually a terrible employee. So it was that idea of, I think I'd come to terms with the fact I needed to move on from Raz, and it was nothing to do with them. It was just that where their business was at the time, they couldn't progress me to the role that I needed. So I'd come to terms with that, and I'd basically added future founder, knowing that from me leaving Raz, everything was going to be designed and it was going to be a content journey of come with me on this trip to me becoming and setting up my own agency. And then I didn't actually realize, and it's typical content series type stuff where you don't realize you're gaining traction and people are actually starting to follow on with the journey. And nobody actually mentioned it to me until I'd set up Deviation. And then they were like, oh, I remember reading your post on ashleyliddell.co.uk or whatever it was, saying you was going to do this, and now you have. And I'm just like, well, yeah, fair point, actually. I have. Yeah, good point. Because I just didn't think of it. But yeah, it was right at the top of my LinkedIn. Every chat that I was having with potential employers, I was really transparent with, look, I'm going to come in, I'm going to learn, I'm going to do some really good work for you, and you're going to make money off me being here. But I am going to be a sponge and I'm going to absorb everything I can so that I can go set up on my own. And not, I'd never say this, but essentially try and put you out of business in 5 years. So yeah.
And if we go back to search everywhere, whenever I think of that term, I think of you guys, which is exactly what you wanted from that trademark. But what does that actually mean for Deviation? And let's say, yeah, what is that indifferent to a traditional SEO agency that offers to their clients?
Yeah, so firstly, that's been really tactical. There's been a lot of noise around that search everywhere piece, and it's been great that certain industry leaders have like leaned on it and then cited us. That's been awesome. But the difference between search everywhere and search everywhere optimization, which is where everyone starts using the term and going around it, is the search everywhere mindset is our idea and it's our approach to connecting the dots between the platforms and the channels that make up search everywhere optimization. It's our framework, if you like. What makes it more deviation than any other agency is, at the moment, my brain, but then through the learning is passing that on and teaching, whether that's junior staff or potential strategists. Look, this is where search is going. This is how we protect against the future of search. Whereas I think what we're seeing at the moment is people are using the search everywhere conversation through search everywhere optimization to just gamify AI and LLM conversations. That is a happy sort of like byproduct of conducting search everywhere. But actually, search everywhere is traditional SEO, brand building, and digital PR and social search. It's those things. It's not really any gamified AI tactics. So yeah, for us, it's basically our Bible. It's our framework of doing search. It differs from the traditional approaches in that we're not too concerned with individual keywords. We're more concerned with the intent of a user and what journey they're on at the time. And we optimize for the journey rather than trying to optimize for specific individual keywords. That's probably the biggest technical sort of description of it, if you like, or the easiest technical description, I should say.
And so you mentioned AI overviews, you mentioned LLM, AI, everything there. So how is that changing in terms of what clients want from you and how you guys adapting?
So, I mean, it's changing all the time for one. So like what's happening today on this conversation could look completely different in 3 months, just to call that out. But at the moment, we as an industry have always focused on non-brand. That's been like SEO's big thing, is we'll get wins in non-brand. I think the biggest shift is brands are now coming to us saying, how can you get my brand more seen, more preferred in a conversation? So that's been the biggest shift for me, has been brands coming to us and asking to grow brand search rather than growing non-brand searches, which is a completely alien idea, I guess. But that's one thing. And then the other piece is the interconnectivity. We've got a lot of brands coming to us and saying, we want you to connect our social strategy to our search strategy, to our PR and branding efforts as well. And be that strategic layer that exists throughout all of those teams, and help us build that strategy and that framework.
Awesome. Perfect. And so if we go back a bit to you starting Deviation, you started it with Sam, your co-founder.
Yeah.
So picking a co-founder is not easy. I learned that the hard way. How did you go about picking Sam? And yeah, do you guys work well together?
Yeah, so to an extent, I think that we work really well together. And I'm going to caveat this because it's good that we don't in some instances. Because if we worked really well together all of the time, then we would just basically be, one of us is a yes man to the other one, and there's no sort of challenging of an idea or of a plan, which means we could be going down the wrong direction. Sam is really good at challenging and putting me out of my comfort zone in terms of, what if a client asks this? What if a lead asks this? Whereas I'd just be, well, that's it, it's done, the strategy's ready type thing. So he is that devil's advocate almost, in terms of qualifying and asking those questions. In terms of how we chose, or how we chose each other, because it's definitely not just like me asking Sam to come on this journey. It was a joint thing. It was we complement each other's skills really well. And I think that's really important because, again, you don't just want to be agreeing with each other. And that means you don't want the same skills for each other either. You want to be able to come at things from different ways or from different angles. So Sam is very operations first. He's very commercially driven. He can look after that side of the conversation and that side of the business really well. And then my strengths are more in the blue sky thinking, strategy, proposition, where the direction of travel is going for what we actually want to build. So the way we phrase it to clients when we was having this chat in our early days is, I had all these ideas in my head. Sam let me bring them out and turn that into a valuable proposition or a potential proposition, and that's really important. So yeah, in terms of how it came around, it was literally just Sam's really entrepreneurial, I'm really entrepreneurial. Can we have that? Should we have that chat? And then we met up at a friend's wedding, and it was just, how's work going? Yeah, not too bad. How's work going? Yeah, not too bad. Should we have a chat? Yeah, it's probably time we should have a chat. So then it just turned into, as the drinks started flowing, like, no, actually we could do this. And then it was one of those ideas that didn't fall away the night after, or the morning after, sorry. And then we jumped on a WhatsApp chat, and it just went from there, really. Originally, there was three of us, and we had somebody that was really super creative, and I think he could have brought a lot to the business, to be fair. He's a great lad, but it just ended up being that me and Sam were really committed to it at the time, and then that meant that we took it forward, whereas the other lad, I won't name him just in case he don't want to be named, but the other lad sort of didn't have the time to dedicate to it in those early days. So that's another thing that's really important, I think, is that you don't want one founder putting in loads of effort and all the effort and then somebody just coasting. You need to be 50-50 if it's two people. And that was really important as well. So yeah, those are, to summarise, it would be someone that complements your skills, someone that's not always going to agree with you and is willing to have those tough conversations, and then someone who is willing to put in just as much work as you and it has the same ambitions as you. If you can find those three things, then you've got a co-founder, I think.
100%. And so we all went for dinner in London the other week, and just even like hearing you guys talk about like everything you guys are doing at Deviation and all the stories of the events and stuff, you can tell you guys have, one, obviously got good chemistry, but two, like super passionate about building Deviation.
Yeah, it's one of those where if you're not passionate about it, it's never going to work anyway. So we would never be in the position that we're already in, with the ambitions to go where we want to go. It would never get off the ground. And I think that's been the difference with Deviation versus what I've done in the past, is we stuck at it when things were tough. Like in the first 6 months, it wasn't easy. And there was a lot that we had to just be like, no, just stick through it. And that passion and that like chemistry and that relationship we've got with each other meant that when we have had tough days, we know we can lean on each other and have those tough conversations. Sam will be, well, I'll be the first to say, like, I bite Sam's head off a lot when we're having those tough days, but it's not like an indication of the full picture. He knows that it's just, oh, Ash is hungry, Ash is tired, whatever it is, and vice versa. Sam will say some stuff and I'm like, that makes no sense to me. But yeah, we've got a good relationship, and hopefully it stays that way, because I know it don't always end up that way.
Perfect. And okay, so if we go back to Deviation, right? Deviation is less than 3 years old, right?
Yeah, we just passed 2 years, like a week ago.
Okay, so 2 years old, and you guys have hit 7-figure revenue, which is like wild. And pretty lean team as well, like 10 people.
Yeah, we've just literally before I jumped on this call, hired our 11th. So yeah.
So 11 people. Let's talk about growth tactics. How have you got there so fast?
So there's a few things at play. The first was we got really lucky with early brands that we was having conversations with, in terms of Matty Martin from Represent was awesome. Reached out and said, look, can your proposition that you're building, your approach that I'm seeing on LinkedIn, can that work for us? And it was like, yeah, let me show you how it can work for you. And we did manage to do a project for Represent and get a case study. Then we worked with Pure Gym and got a case study. And then we worked with, can I say, big gym brand in Birmingham, and got a case study. So we got 3 case studies from 3 huge brands, which meant whenever we went into a room for any brand, whether it was a small brand or another big brand, they could see that we knew what we was talking about for a business at their size, because we'd either exceeded their current brand size, or our case studies matched what their ambition was. So that helped massively, getting in those doors early. A lot of those weren't paid opportunities either. I think we got small payment for one of those 3 projects, but the other 2 were basically just let us help you out. And then from there, it turned into basically, can we use thought leadership? Can we use personal brand to drive inbound? Because the last thing we wanted to do was sit on emails, blasting out cold outreach emails. So we went down the road of, let's grow search everywhere. Let's grow the conversation around this term. Let's grow intrigue around this term so people want to know what it's about. We'll then do webinars on it, or we'll go talk at Brighton SEO San Diego on this idea, convince people that this is the direction of travel. And because we've passed on some education, passed on some value, they should be more likely to reach out to us when they need that solution and when they want to action it. And that's exactly what's happened, really. I contribute blogs for like Search Engine Land. I've wrote blogs for SEMrush and a few other sort of like industry publications. So that, again, when people are questioning whether TikTok's a search engine, how social search plays into AI, they think of me, and then as a result, Deviation.
I love that. I love 2 things of that. I loved that those first 3 projects, 2 of them were free. I talk about it a lot to some of my friends that are trying to just get started. I'm like, honestly, do the work. Like there's case studies and clients that we would nearly pay the client to work with us first, because then you get their name. There's a great book called Whale Hunting by Tom Sarcy, and it takes the metaphor of how the Inuits hunt whales. So they wait all year round for the whales to come around. They come around one day a year. Everybody in the village has got one task. That's to get the whales. And they could hunt caribou or seals, which would feed them for the weeks, but the whale feeds them for the year. And it takes that and puts it to like modern day sales. And like getting a whale or like one of those brands, it just attracts more whales. And it's just like it's a no-brainer when it comes to business.
100%. And it's one of those where even if they're small projects, you're just looking, and again, we did this tactically where it was like, right, we've done this for rep. Can we go do the next piece of search everywhere for, we'll just use Pure Gym as the example, and then the final piece of the puzzle for Gymshark. Oh, I've named them now, so never mind. For Gymshark. So then if we can do that 3, this one training, this one proposition, this one strategy, we've then got the 3 pieces, so that if someone asks us for strategy work, there's that. If someone asks us for education, we've got evidence of the education. So super valuable. And again, we benefited we were able to do that because I had the money coming from previous employment and looking after us that way, so we could afford to take that risk and bet on ourselves a little bit there as well.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Cash is always a hard, tricky subject, especially for a startup. But you were getting paid at the start. But again, you guys did like exceptionally well. You got those brand deals. Was it we reinvest everything until we get to a certain size before we take anything on the table? Talk us through that.
Yeah, so we basically went from the July to the December. So December 2024, really lean, like leave everything in the business. Everything has to go into marketing, pay for the website, whatever it is. It stays there. Then we won our first and second like retained services clients for 12 months. And because they were retained, we knew, okay, we can afford to pay ourselves a little bit of something here. But we didn't go mad. Like we still wanted to leave money for marketing and things like that in the accounts. So I'd say we paid ourselves really lean for probably the first year. And now it's starting to get into that position where we are paying ourselves a decent salary now, and we're starting to reap those rewards a little bit. So we mentioned the kids at the start. I've got 5 kids overall, which means I need to buy a bloody big house. So we're now starting to grow into that position where we can be saving for a deposit and things like that, which is nice. But yeah, at the start, really lean, put as much back into marketing, especially events, especially. Everything else sort of went on the back burner a little bit, and then hiring as well. We did rather hire somebody and get another strategist in probably sooner than we should have, just so that when we're going to pitches, we have somebody else in the room that's not just me and Sam, and you can see that it's starting to grow and that we're gaining traction. So we probably hired a month earlier, maybe 2 months early, compared to what we probably should have if you was going off the X amount of revenue per head count conversation. And we did that repeatedly until we got up to probably 6 or 7 people. And now we're in a situation where we will forecast and we'll hire based on the revenue that we've got coming in and the pitches, and we're getting a bit more sophisticated for that. But yeah, front load our hires, pay ourselves minimal, put it all back into marketing, and reap the rewards a little bit later on.
I love that, man. And you guys deserve it. You guys have been killing it. But yeah, okay, let's talk about hiring. So have you made any hiring mistakes yet?
Hiring mistakes, maybe, in terms of the wrong tier, not the wrong person. We've been really lucky that we've hired people that are hungry and people that are curious, which are probably my 2 biggest things that I'm looking for when I hire someone. But we have probably hired an exec when we probably needed another strategist, and then the reverse as well. We probably hired a strategist when we needed another exec. So yeah, they're the closest we've come to mistakes. They've been easy enough fixes because of the growth, which has meant we've been able to learn from the mistakes without actually suffering from them too much. But yeah, it's more been just misunderstanding the problem we were facing in terms of tasks that needed doing at a certain time. And then the biggest mistake has probably been we waited too long to hire an account manager / delivery manager / traffic manager, whatever you want to call them, because we got to a team of 4. All right, this is great. This is fine. We can manage everything. Then we had really quick growth and we turned to a team of 8 basically overnight. And then you go, Monday.com is now screaming at me. Our capacity is screaming at me. Like all these things, all these levers that were easy before are starting to become a bit of a pain in our ass. So yeah, we was probably 2 months too late with the hiring of an account manager. That's the job offer that we've just sent out literally as I jumped on this call. So hopefully that's going to be fixed.
Crossing fingers. Well, honestly, the bit that you said about being proactive when it comes to hiring versus reactive is like, and I'm not just saying this, like it is the one trait that I see in like all successful founders, agency owners that come to us. Like we'll be on calls with them and they're like, yeah, we need to hire yesterday. And then versus the people like, for example, Sophie Brown in Studio Hawk US, like she came to us, I want to say 7 or 8 months before she needed to make like a super senior SEO strategist hire. And she was like, right, we know it's like, we want to get the right person. It's not urgent. We want to have 6 months out to like make sure we get the right person for this. They were growing really fast. They were on early stages. And honestly, the difference in 1, it makes our jobs easier, but 2, like I'm genuinely seeing that trait across the board that they're the agencies that are winning. Because again, it's
100%. It doesn't surprise me that you're seeing that, to be fair, because even in our like small agency, we hired into our PR team specifically early, like ridiculously early, really, compared to what most people would. So we hired 2 months before we even had a PR client. So they was just basically not making us any money for 2 months. But what it meant was we could teach them the Search Everywhere framework, get them completely embedded, and build a PR and start to build a PR system. so that when we won that work or started that project, which we knew we had, we just probably didn't need to have them start as early as they did. They could hit the ground running basically and start to build coverage straight away, rather than waiting until the retainer started and then bringing the person in and having them start from day one, which would have slowed us down massively. So yeah, PR came in 2 months before we actually needed them, and now it's probably our fastest growing single channel. So when brands don't go for the full search everywhere, that's the fastest growing area of the business, to be fair.
Yeah, and I'd say a lot of that is down to the 2 months of onboarding and training on that to make sure that when it was coming in, it was nearly perfected. I love that. And okay, so no hiring mistakes, but let's talk about delegation, right? Deviation is your and Sam's baby. You guys have got a team of 11 now. How did you deal with delegation in that early days? Everything can't have sign off from Ashley, sign off from Sam all the time. You mentioned that strategist that you had. How'd you deal with that?
Yeah, so I would say this has been a lot harder for me because I'm a bit of a control freak, especially when it comes down to strategy and things like that. Because, and I think a lot of small agencies face this problem, even big agencies, to be fair, is founder goes to pitches for the work, gets passionate about the strategy, but then cannot sit on the delivery. Like the founder cannot sit on every client's delivery, but they want to. So getting out of the weeds a little bit when it comes to that stuff and actually giving people opportunities to contribute to pitches has been one way that we've been able to delegate really well, because then I don't feel attached to the strategy on that day-to-day level where it's been my baby. I can just look at it and be like, have you considered this? Have you thought about this? Should we talk about this? And almost become that board sponsor or that exec sponsor who can sit across accounts. So delegation to strategists has been really important. The lucky thing for us is I actually hate doing the delivery. I love the strategy, love coming up with the idea, love coming up with what the broad level thinking or the top level thinking. But then if you said to me, Ash, I need you to go do keyword research, intent research, and then this many briefs, like I couldn't think of anything worse, to be fair. So delegating that stuff's been like a joy for me. Sam, on the other hand, and again, this goes back to that potential mistake with the account manager piece. Bless him, he's had to be on every account as that client success / operations face. And as we've now gone past 10 retained clients, that becomes incredibly difficult for one man to be able to do the context shift for that number of accounts. So yeah, delegation in that area probably needs to improve a little bit. And as I say, we've hired this account delivery traffic manager type person now. So hopefully they can come in, take some of that, and Sam will be able to delegate in that way appropriately.
You mentioned 10 accounts. Have you had any potential clients that you've had to walk away from?
I think we're about to. We've not had any. We've not had any that we've categorically had to say no to yet. We've had clients say no to us. Obviously, we haven't got like 100% success rate or anything daft like that, and that's probably a good next segue. But yeah, we haven't had to say no to anybody as yet. But I can see that that's starting to arise because everybody's concerned with that AI LLM piece, but their businesses aren't necessarily set up to capitalize on it. So their teams operate in silo. You have chats with people and they're the wrong person for the right chat. So they're trying to have the right conversation, but they're just not the right budget holder, or they're not the right stakeholder who's actually going to be able to implement that. So we need to and we're constantly looking to reinvent our qualification process to make sure, are we chatting to the right person? Is this the budget holder? Is the budget in place? All of those good things. But yeah, we've been fortunate in that the leads that have come inbound and the referral leads that we've had so far, they've all been like on point for us, to be honest, and we haven't faced those issues yet where we've had to say, actually, this isn't going to work.
Nice. And okay, so we mentioned that you have done pieces for SEMrush, Search Engine Land, and created this whole inbound strategy. So agency owner or anybody that's listening to this that's like, right, I've got something important that I think is different that's going on in the industry. I want to get my voice out there and I want to do the same thing. What kind of advice would you give to them?
I'd say that there's no better time than now, because we're in a space where AI and the LLMs are looking for something new to add to a conversation all the time. So in a world where people who aren't as passionate or don't have a different stance, they're all fading into the noise. If you do have a different opinion or you do have something extra to contribute to a conversation, now is the best time to be having that, because you can gain quite quick citations, recommendations, inclusions in pieces, because we're all looking for that AI inclusion. In terms of what I would suggest to do, I think Substack is one that we're leaning on at the moment. I think that you can start to build a voice on Substack. And then if you can amplify that so that you can start getting your followers through LinkedIn content, through video content, but then also from attending events and doing stuff in the real world, they're the three things that I think are going to elevate the message that you're trying to put into the world, because otherwise you will be at risk of fading into that noise. We used to put all of our blogs on our own website. The own website in the early days did not do a great deal, obviously. Whereas my LinkedIn, whereas things like Substack and then webinars and podcasts, they did a lot of the heavy lifting for us in the early days. Now we're at a point where the Deviation website does attract a certain number of visitors, a healthy number of visitors. Substack's doing well. And then, without sounding like too much of a celebrity, I do these events which do us the world of good. The physical in-world events are amazing for us.
Perfect. Have you got a LinkedIn newsletter?
No, I am, to be fair. It's not something... It's one of these where I do try and post every day and share value every day as much as I can, whether it's on the journey or whether it's insights. But yeah, I know that there's SEOs and there's marketers that have those newsletters and they're doing good stuff. But I think the pressure of having to write something every week or every fortnight or whatever it is would probably start to bog down on me a little bit. Whereas if I've got something to put into the world, that's a better approach for me at the minute, I think.
You can do that on the same as LinkedIn newsletter. You don't have to say it's weekly, bi-weekly. The only reason I say is, for me personally, it's such low effort. It's like, I'll take this podcast, right? Take the transcript of this, put in a piece onto a blog. We put it on our website, we put it everywhere else. It goes on LinkedIn newsletter. But what LinkedIn does is, when it's a newsletter, it notifies everybody on your connection list that Josh Peacock's posted this.
Okay.
But also what it does is it emails everybody, right? So it emails it from LinkedIn. So the open rate is like 44% on average, right? You've got like thousands of people opening it because it's from LinkedIn and it's the title of whatever this podcast is going to be, right? Like it's just such great attribution with, like, for me personally, like, it's already going to go on our website. You said you've got blogs that are going on.
Yeah.
It's crazy how easy it is.
That's annoying now, because obviously I didn't know that was an option, and to just do them sporadically. Because we've had blog posts that have done really well, and LinkedIn posts that have done really well that would be able to exist as that type of newsletter type contribution. So yeah, that's getting stolen. So yeah, that's cool.
From Ashley.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. Okay, cool. Let's go back to an expensive lesson that you've learned along the way.
Oh, expensive in monetary terms, or expensive in time and in time investment, brain investment, whatever it is?
It can be both. It could be, an agency owner's listening to this and they're about to start an agency, or they're going through their agency at the minute. What kind of lesson can you teach that they don't have to make?
Okay. That's an interesting one. I would say... Okay, so I'll come at it from a little bit of a different angle. I would say one way that you can prevent this prevent any issue is lean on people in your network who've already been there and done that. So maybe not, it's not been a deviation learning for me, but it has with any other attempts that I've had creating a business, is I would never really have anyone to lean on in those businesses, whether it was the e-commerce business at uni or whatever it is throughout the years. I've never had anyone to be a sounding board for those ideas, to actually go, have you considered this, to be that voice of reason, if you like. So I would find, and in my case, it's been the likes of a Stephen Kenwright in the SEO space, for example, someone who's got a proven track record of doing exactly what you're trying to do, and lean on them whenever you can. We've been really fortunate in that Kenwright, bless him, has gave us a lot of his time for free. That people who are the type of person that Kenwright is probably wouldn't. So you may have to pay for that that time and that opinion, but I think that that's a worthwhile investment, rather than just making the mistake, basically. So yeah, we've had it before where we've rushed in. I've rushed into a decision with previous businesses, whereas with Deviation, although we want to be fast, we want to be proactive, and we're trying to do things at speed, we still have a sounding board of people that we can put an idea in front of and get feedback and get thoughts on. So yeah, that's one piece of advice that I would say is really important. But to be the opposite side of that coin is understand when you need to take that advice and when you also need to back your gut. So we will always ask for the advice, but just because Kenwright gives me advice, for example, doesn't mean that I'm 100% going to take what Kenwright said as gospel and only go with that decision. You also have to trust your gut a little bit, because if you look at when we started the agency, for example, and I put my soundboards out to the likes of Stephen Kenwright, to the likes of Andrew Holland was another voice that I put the proposition in front of. They didn't necessarily agree that that was the direction to travel, especially not 100%. So if I'd have took their feedback wholeheartedly, I probably wouldn't have even took the leap to start the business. So you've got to trust your gut a little bit and back yourself is probably the biggest piece of advice I can give. Because yeah, although it slightly contradicts that first point, it is really important that you understand they're not going to be in your business tomorrow. It's you that's going to have to wake up tomorrow and deal with whatever decision it is. So make sure you're 100% behind the decision that you make. And that'd be another piece of advice. And then starting to get into it now. At first, I couldn't think of anything. Yeah, I'd say those two are the biggest. Back yourself, take on the advice, put things to different people, but understand that you're the one that has to own that decision and die by that sword. So trust your gut. They'd be the things that I would say to someone starting an agency today.
I love that. I love the mentor one. I think I told you guys in London the other week that I wanted to get a mentor for salaryguide.com. Wanted somebody who had bootstrapped a SaaS company, brought it to 8 figures. I put it up on LinkedIn. I got on like 12 calls with like people that have built successful successful SaaS brands and sold them, but either just didn't vibe with them, or they now do like school programs or mentorship programs where you're just another number. I didn't want that. I wanted one-on-one. A friend of mine introduced me to this guy who doesn't do consultancy. He bootstrapped a US SaaS to 24 million ARR in 6.5 years. He retired 2 years ago and he just wants to do consulting because he's like wants to get his hands dirty, but he's not like actively looking. So I told him, I was like, I know you're going to be expensive. Like, so like, be easy on me. I was like, I'm 27 years old, bootstrap company, like, just like, be easy on me. And he was like, yeah, he was like, I'm only doing this for fun. It's not about the money. And then he came back saying he's $1,000 an hour. To which I had my first call with him the other week, and he's traveling at the minute. So the first 2 minutes, his Wi-Fi connection wasn't on in his hotel. So first 2 minutes, and I think 2 or 3 nights before, I worked out that if we do 5 minutes of chit chat, it was like £100, right? So I was like, I sent him over this like one pager of like where we are, all of our numbers, the questions I wanted to do. And I said in the most respectful way, I don't want to hear about your week. I just want to go straight into it. And
I want to get my value.
So we did the hour call, and at the end, he was like, dude, I'm not going to charge you. He was like, my Wi-Fi was mucked up at the start. I was like, get in. So I had like 3 pages of notes through the whole thing. I was so happy. But awesome. My last question for you, Ashley, is what is the future of Ashley and Deviation?
So they are two very different things, which I think is also a really healthy position to be in. And it ties right nicely to that point is know what you want out of the business. So I know, and we can get into this, but another piece of advice was go into it knowing exactly what you want from it, and then you'll never be disappointed. So I'm going into Deviation. Me and Sam are really aligned that we're growing the business to sell, and we know we're going to be growing this business to hopefully get a sale and get an exit. That is one thing, so we can talk about that really quickly. Deviation, hopefully we continue to grow. We're not stupid enough to think that the growth will continue at the current rate forever, but we want to ride that wave absolutely while it is taking place and while we are new to the conversation. Grow the business, continue to grow the conversation of search everywhere, because that'll help us as well. And keep doing cool shit as well. So like going to cool events, going and seeing the world. That's part of it. So we're going to enjoy that and do that as well. And then for Ashley, it's post Deviation, post you get that exit, spend some time with the family, of course, but then can I go and become CMO at one of 3 or 4 companies? So Adidas, Stone Island, WWE, or Man United. Like they'd be the 4 like brands that I'd want to challenge myself. That'd be something completely different and completely new. I've never been really brand sad. So yeah, scale Deviation, get that exit. Don't rest on my laurels. Take whatever time out I have to because of the exit. I'll obviously say you have to take some time out. And then go and manufacture a career as a CMO at one of those big 4 brands, really. That's the ambition.
Dude, I love that you've got a plan for after the exit, because there's some crazy study of it's like when CEOs exit their company, it's like if they don't work for, I can't remember how long it is. It's like 2 or 3 years. They start coming up with these illnesses. Their knees stop working. Like, doesn't matter what age they are. It's like it's literally just because they've been all go and then they stop and their body just starts shutting down. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's one of those situations, and everyone's got an example of it where, whether it's a relative, a neighbour, a friend, family friend, whatever it is, someone gets to retirement who's been chasing 55 or 65. They get to retirement, they retire, they think they've got a really good pension, and then they drop down dead 2 years later or whatever it is. So they've worked to that exit, don't really know what they're going to do post it, and then just, bless them, drop down dead and don't get to enjoy it. So it's like, instead, I'd much rather keep my head in the game, work at something like, I love this industry. I really enjoy my job. So to be able to go do that for one of those 4 or 5 brands would be mega.
Dude, you'll do it, no doubt. I've got no doubt in my mind that you'll get there. I love to hear it. Ashley, for anybody listening along and want to follow you along, where can they find you?
So the best places to find me personally are definitely on LinkedIn. I do have a Twitter, X, whatever it is, if you still use that as well. Ashley _Liddell _SEO. And then for the business, you'll find us at wearedeviation.co.uk, or just Google search everywhere and we will definitely show up.
Thanks for sticking around to the end, and I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're an agency owner that is wanting to scale and wants to continue bringing your business to new heights and doesn't want to put everything on pause for hiring and finding the best talent that's out there in SEO and paid media, well, that's something I can help with. I own a recruitment company that has specialized in both the SEO and paid media sector, and we work with 100+ businesses. So I'm going to leave 2 links below. There's no big pitch here, but if you want to talk over strategy and hiring and how myself and my team can find you the best A-player talent in both the SEO and paid media sector, then please book in, and I look forward to talking to you. Thank you.